For 40 years, I denied the existence of God. As a psychiatrist, my life was dedicated to science, reason, and what could be seen and proven. Heaven? Hell? Life after death? All just illusions created by the human mind. At least, that's what I thought. My name is Dr. Roberto Salgado, and for 68 years, I was a skeptic, convinced that faith was just an emotional crutch. I mocked those who believed in the spiritual, tearing apart their arguments with logic and statistics. But one day, everything changed. My heart stopped beating. For 23 minutes, I was dead. I went to hell. I saw the eternal suffering of people I once knew, colleagues, patients, brilliant scientists, all now consumed by despair. And they all told me the same thing. We didn't believe. Now it's too late. If you think hell is just a story made up to scare people, I challenge you to keep reading. But be warned, what I'm about to reveal may change everything you think you know about life and death. My life was exactly as I wanted it. As a renowned psychiatrist, I owned a respected clinic, treated influential people, and my schedule was always full. Science was my religion, and my pride was my faith. On Sundays, while my wife and children went to church, I preferred to review medical articles. Religion is just a psychological crutch for those who can't accept reality, I used to say. To me, life was simple. If it couldn't be proven, it didn't exist. I remember one patient, Estella, a woman who lost her son in a car accident. Through tears, she told me, "Doctor, I know my son is with Jesus. I saw him in a dream." I didn't even hesitate. I adjusted my glasses, took notes, and explained that it was just a defense mechanism of the brain. "That's just your mind trying to process grief," I said coldly. "The best thing you can do is accept reality." Today, I would give anything to go back in time and erase those words. That night seemed normal. Nothing felt wrong. Until suddenly, a sharp pain tore through my chest. My vision blurred, cold sweat covered my skin. I knew exactly what was happening, a massive heart attack. I tried to call out to my wife, but my voice failed. My legs gave out beneath me. The last sound I heard was her desperate voice on the phone. "My husband is having a heart attack." The paramedics arrived quickly. I felt my body being lifted onto the stretcher, heard frantic voices around me, but something strange was happening. My mind was no longer there. Pressure dropping. "We need to act fast." I heard one of the doctors shout. The sound of the heart monitor filled the room. Beep. First shock. Nothing. Second shock. Nothing. Third shock. Everything went dark. And then, I started falling. The absolute silence was broken by a single sensation: I was falling. This was no ordinary fall, like fainting or dreaming. It was an endless descent, without air, without light. Fear gripped me like an electric current surging through every part of my being. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The air around me became thick, suffocating. The stench of sulfur and burning flesh filled my lungs. And then, I hit the ground. The surface was rough, scorching, as if I were stepping on burning coals. Hell was real. Whispers echoed around me, shadows moved across the twisted walls. The heat was unbearable, searing me from the inside out. Then, a voice cut through the darkness. "Dr. Salgado, welcome to the place you denied." My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Walls made of faces screaming in silence, bodies trapped in endless agony. The corridor stretched endlessly like a maze, and on both sides, cells, filled with people who seemed to have been there forever. The air was dense, almost impossible to breathe. I felt pure terror, something no study or book could ever explain. "You always wanted to study the human mind, Doctor?" The dark voice whispered beside me. "Now you can study the condemned soul." A figure approached. Tall, thin, with empty eyes. His smile was something I would never forget. "Your patients are eager to see you." My heart, or whatever was left of it, sank. I was about to face the weight of my own words. I spent my life denying God, convincing patients that faith was an illusion, that spiritual experiences were just tricks of the brain. But now, standing before those tormented souls, I realized the price of my words. I saw Estella in a dark cell, her eyes filled with an indescribable horror. "Doctor, why did you make me doubt?" Her voice was barely a whisper. My lips trembled. How could I answer that? I saw hell in my dreams. God was warning me. But you told me it was just my mind. My legs nearly gave out. I did this. I had helped send her here. And then, the dark figure leaned into my ear and whispered, "How many people did you bring here, doctor?" Hell began to tremble. A blinding light tore through the darkness. The shadows twisted, screams echoed from all directions. "It is not your time yet." That voice carried an authority that could not be challenged. The heat vanished, the shadows faded. And then, I heard human voices. "He's coming back. We have a pulse." My eyes shot open. I was alive. I came back, but I was never the same. Now, I know hell is real. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. It was a warning. And I need to tell the truth before it's too late. Because one day, you too will have to face what comes after death. The only question that matters is, are you ready? Here is the continuation of the story in American English, keeping the intensity, suspense, and transformation of Dr. Salgado after his return. I was alive, but something inside me had died. The skeptic, the arrogant psychiatrist who mocked faith, that man was left behind, in that place of darkness. When I opened my eyes in the ICU, I felt tears running down my face. They weren't from pain. They were from relief. My wife held my hand tightly, her eyes red from crying. "You came back to me," she whispered. I wanted to answer, but my throat was dry. What could I even say? How do you explain to someone that you've seen hell with your own eyes? The doctors called my case a miracle. They said no one stays dead for 23 minutes and returns without severe brain damage. I knew there was no medical explanation for what had happened. God had given me a second chance. But why? What did he want from me? At that moment, I didn't have all the answers. I only knew one thing: nothing in my life would ever be the same again. The following days were a whirlwind. My colleagues, the same people who once admired me for my logic and scientific mind, now looked at me differently. Some came to visit me in the hospital, curiosity in their eyes. "Roberto, what did you see?" one of them asked. I opened my mouth to answer but hesitated. How do you explain something science can't measure? How do you tell them that you saw hell, heard the screams of the lost, felt the unbearable heat of eternal separation from God? I knew no one would believe me. So, I did what I had always done before: I stayed silent. But the silence didn't bring me peace. Every night, when I closed my eyes, I saw them. The faces of the damned. Estella. My old professor. My patients. They looked at me with hollow, accusing eyes. "You made us doubt." My breathing became heavy. My hands trembled. I couldn't escape it. I had to tell the truth. But I knew it would come at a price. Returning to my daily routine felt strange. My office no longer felt the same. Before, I treated every patient as nothing more than a collection of neurons and psychological traumas. Now, I saw beyond that. I saw souls. And then something happened that changed everything. A young man walked into my office. Early 20s, eyes filled with emptiness. He sat down in front of me and said, "Doctor, I don't see any purpose in life anymore." In the past, I would have prescribed antidepressants, explained how brain chemistry affects our emotions. But that day, I did something different. I leaned forward, looked him straight in the eyes, and asked, "Do you believe in God?" He looked startled. I don't know." I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding. This was my chance. Then let me tell you a story. For the first time, I told someone everything. Every detail. The descent into hell, the condemned souls, the horror of being forever separated from God. The young man listened in complete silence, his eyes wide with shock. When I finished, he whispered, "What should I do?" "Seek God. Now. Before it's too late." He walked out of my office a changed man. And so did I. That was the moment I understood, this was the reason for my second chance. Word of my near-death experience spread. Some colleagues were fascinated. Others laughed. "Roberto, you are a man of science. What's happening to you?" One of them asked. "I saw something that science cannot explain." They shook their heads. Some called me crazy. But I didn't care. I kept telling my story. I spoke to patients, to colleagues, even to small church groups. The more I spoke, the more people came looking for me. "Doctor, I had a dream about hell. Doctor, I feel something pulling me away from God." My office, once a place of medical diagnosis, became a place where people sought hope. But not everyone was happy about that. One day, I received an official warning from the hospital where I had worked for decades. "If you keep talking about religion with patients, you will lose your position." I spent that night in deep thought. What should I do? Then, for the first time in my life, I opened a Bible. And my eyes landed on Matthew 16 verse 26. "For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeits his soul?" I knew my answer. The next morning, I resigned. I had spent years gaining everything. Now, I needed to save souls. My story spread further. Invitations started coming in. People wanted to hear about what I saw. I traveled to churches, universities, conferences. From a skeptical psychiatrist, I became a man who had seen hell and returned to warn others. Some rejected me. Others mocked me. But many wept. "Doctor, your story changed my life. I was lost, but now I know I need to turn to God." I knew I couldn't save everyone. But if even one soul was rescued because of my testimony, then everything I went through was worth it. Hell is real. It's not just a concept. It's not a scary story. I was there. I saw what happens to those who reject God. And I came back to warn you. If you're reading this right now, it's not a coincidence. God is giving you a chance. I was arrogant. I was blind. And I almost paid the eternal price. But you still have time. The only question that matters is, are you ready to face what comes after death? Or will you wait until it's too late?